Well, House Republicans will be gathering shortly in the basement of the Capitol to hear from the 9 candidates who have indicated they would seek the support of their colleagues to lead the fractured caucus. They have spent the weekend on the phones talking with their fellow House members and others, trying to build support. I've had several conversations over the weekend, and I am hopeful, I am hopeful and prayerful, I prayed with several of them over the weekend, that they can arrive at a speaker sometime this week. So what do we know about each of the candidates? Joining me now to discuss this is Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs here at the Family Research Council. Travis, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, let's talk about the 9 candidates. Let's get an overview of them. The FRC Action has a scorecard, and so we have lifetime ratings for these members, which really indicate where they stand on key issues such as faith, family, and freedom. So let's run down the list of who's running and how they line up.
Yeah, so Tony, we do have those numbers as we've kept track of the votes that these elected leaders have taken on key issues in Congress over the years. So Congressman Jack Bergman has a lifetime of 97.28, Byron Donalds 98.7, Tom Emmer 93, Kevin Hern 96, Mike Johnson 99.4, Dan Muser 95.6, Gary Palmer 100%, Pete Sessions 97, and Austin Scott 95. And so those are the overall numbers. You know, they're all pretty high, Tony. But there are some votes that stuck out to me in particular, looking at their records, votes that we have noted with particular focus, particular interest of concern of faith, family, and freedom. So the overall numbers.
Let's take a look, because I mean, realistically, I think there's a few here that stick out that are going to be stronger contenders than the others, as I've been talking to members over the weekend. I mean, we see some really good guys here, lots of friends. But I'm going to start with one who has the lowest score, because he's anticipated by some to be one of the stronger candidates, and that's Tom Emmer, who happens to currently be the whip. And he has a score of 93, which is the lowest among all of those pursuing it. What brought him to that lower score?
Yeah, so most notably his vote for the Respect for Marriage Act. This was the legislation that put into federal statute that legalized same-sex marriage, and so it was a bill that we strongly opposed and did what we could to highlight why no elected official should vote for this bill. But unfortunately, he did vote for that. He also voted for the legitimization and spread of marijuana through the banking system, against DOJ enforcing our marijuana laws, and notably preventing enforcement of the transgender military policy. He voted against an amendment, or he voted the wrong way on an amendment that would have prevented the enforcement of a transgender military policy. So he also voted for the Maloney Amendment back in 2016 that would have that provided for special protections for sexual orientation and gender identity. So some concerning votes for Congressman Emmer on these questions of sexuality and family, for sure.
Well, I want to, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, and he's probably an outlier on that, because I don't think any of the others have votes that are in line with LGBTQ and transgender and all that. The one that I do see a common thread through some of them is this legalization of marijuana. That seems to be something we've talked about even on this program. This is where I think there's this infiltration of libertarianism within the party, and some thinking, well, look, let's just legalize it.
Yeah, no, Tony, that is a thread. We've seen even when those votes happened, we recall noting some Republicans voting for the Safe Banking Act, which would provide for the facilitation of marijuana-related transactions in the banking system, and against DOJ enforcement. So there's this thought of, just let the states deal with it, or,
right.
It's in the system anyway. And this is problematic for a number of reasons. But I think, as we continue to put the reasons and argumentation out there and the evidence comes to light about what happens when you legitimize drugs,
right.
Hopefully elected officials will see that.
Just again, some of the candidates kind of toward the top vying for this post that have that position have voted to legalize marijuana or make it more moving in that direction with the Safe Banking Act was Byron Donalds. We also had Kevin Hern, who has cast some votes. He's the Republican study committee chairman. He's got a 96% lifetime. He's a good guy, but this is one of those issues that seems to be popping up. Mike Johnson, who is the vice chair of the Republican Conference, he near the top with 99.4%. What happened to that 0.6%?
Yeah, so Tony, that was the year that we scored against the National Defense Authorization Act over the issue of women in the draft. And there were a few other issues with it, but with the NDAA, there's a lot of it's a big vote for members, and there's a lot of considerations that go into that.
Well, and he's on the House Armed Services Committee, where there's an expectation, unless there's really something bad, that members support it.
Right. So his support for the NDA, that was the only vote that caused him to move off of 100%. So that was the explanation there.
All right, Travis, I know we're going to be tracking this this evening. They'll be going late into the night with a candidate forum, and then we're anticipating possibly tomorrow having a vote on the House floor for a speaker. So we're going to be watching that very closely. Travis, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.